Well, hopefully that gets you pretty motivated for this next session that we have. And good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for coming and join us for this global networking panel on, I think, one of the most important transitions in human spaceflight, moving from the International Space Station to the next generation of commercial space stations. As we all know, the ISS has been an extraordinary international achievement. Over 2 decades of continuous human presence in orbit, groundbreaking research and global cooperation. But with its retirement approaching in 2030, we stand at a really pivotal moment. What comes next will define how the world accesses, governs, and benefits from low Earth orbit and the decades to come. At Voyager, we see this not just as a handoff, but as an expansion. The Starlab space station, developed in partnership with Airbus, Mitsubishi, MDA, Hilton, and Palantir, is designed to serve governments, industry, and researchers alike. It will support civil, commercial, and national security missions, carrying forward the legacy of ISS, while also unlocking the entirely new opportunities in science, manufacturing, and international collaboration. But success in this new era depends on more than engineering. It requires policy framework that keeps pace with innovation, addressing sovereignty, liability, sustainability, and global participation. And that's what makes today's conversation so important. We're fortunate to have today our 3 leaders who bring a unique perspective on this transition. Marshall Smith, the CEO of Starlab, Issei Shinohara from Mitsubishi, and Issei will discuss the role of Mitsubishi and Japan's vision for continued leadership in LEO, and John Horak will highlight the research and development opportunities that the commercial stations like Starlab can unlock and for universities and researchers alike. So with that, I just want to start a round of questions for the audience, and then questions for you guys, and then maybe some time for the audience. Marshall, Starlab has often been described as one of the most advanced successors to the ISS. Can you walk us through the design and what makes it different from the ISS model today?
Yeah, that'd be great. When I think about Starlab, I think of it more than a station. It's more than a space station. It's kind of a vision. Our vision is to really raise the level of what's going on in human development and progress as we move forward. Space is the next frontier. We've always said that, but we're on the verge of that actually being reality. I know ISS has been in orbit with continuous human presence for 20 years. We want to continue that, but open up a new chapter in what we're doing commercially to actually open up marketing, open up manufacturing, open up science and research, unleashing industry to be able to do things with IP that allows new drugs to be made, pharmaceuticals, transformative things to happen in healthcare with respect to kidneys and organ type transplants. We also have wide open development in semiconductors. All of those things are enabled by microgravity, and it requires, really a full-time presence. This is not something you can do like we did in the space station, go up for a few weeks and come back, 3 or 4 or 5 months later. It requires continuous human presence and engagement on that as well. So those are all really important. To your question, though, with respect to design and development, we're pretty far along. We've been involved in the NASA CLD program. We were one of the SAA winners first time around. We had the largest award. We finished 25 development milestones. We're moving toward critical design review coming up shortly in the next few months. And we'll be moving out on manufacturing as we move forward. The station itself is, as you saw, it's very large. Matter of fact, if you have a chance, please go down to the booth. If you go down in the exhibition hall, you turn right and go to the wall, and you walk down there, you'll see it. It's very large. That's actually just one floor of floor. There's no floors in space. One level of the vehicle itself, but there are three vehicle levels that are habitation areas, and then of course, something that's just as tall and as large as this cone section, which has the electronics and support systems for life support and power systems and those types of things. So all of those systems together really makes a very, very large station, much larger than what we've had on the ISS and similar type vehicles that have been proposed. You ask why that's important? Well, the size of the ISS was dictated by the size of the shuttle bay. And we're not limited to what the space shuttle can do. We have other vehicles now that are much larger, allows us more capability. One of the things that does for us is allows us to build everything inside, so we can basically eliminate extravehicular activities, which are very expensive, very risky activities. We can, only have to deal with things on the outside that are required, and then handle those robotically for the most part. Of course, we can do contingency EVAs if we need to. But again, we can now build and maintain and do those things inside, which is a much more cost-effective way to do it. So those are the high points. We've got a lot of capability. I'm sure throughout the rest of this afternoon session, we'll hear more about that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Issei, Mitsubishi brings a critical international perspective to Starlab. How does Japan and Mitsubishi view its role in LEO after the ISS, and how do you feel that you fit into the Starlab program?
Well, thank you for your question, Eric. I was speaking about Mitsubishi's role in Starlab, and we have two key role in Starlab. Number one is engagement with the Japanese stakeholders, and then number two is to create a commercial new demand. And I'll touch on a little bit more on each topic. And then number one, we have been actively engaging with the Japanese stakeholders, such as JAXA and space industries. And what we are trying to do here is support them to build up right strategy for post-ISS. And our activities include cross-coordination, cross-technically and commercial coordination with them on the areas that research utilization and cargo transportation and future operation structure, something like that. And what we can do this is because Mitsubishi Corporation, is the only one company who is directly get involved in the CLD in the US program. And that makes us kind of advantageous in a positioning to provide unique insight, a unique proposal to Japanese stakeholder, and which is necessary for them to shape right strategy for future Japanese post-ISS strategy. So going forward, we're going to keep engaging them to support them going right path forward after ISS. That's number one. And then number two, create commercial demand. We work to create a commercial demand, very actively. And it sounds very challenging. It's challenging, but we see it as a very essential so that we can achieve commercially viable space station in a serious manner. And that activity requires tremendous efforts. Not just distributing a brochure and a pamphlet, rather than it requires lots of things like understanding of needs of non-space industries, and co-developing visions, realistic visions for large-scale commercialization beyond just one-off experiment on the station, and assembling right partner and teammates if necessary. And of course, we have to secure the fund, which is needed. And more importantly, we have to ensure the customer to smooth transition from ISS to CLD. And as I said, there are so many things needs to be considered to really dig up commercial new demand. But we believe Mitsubishi Corporation has expertise to make that happen, such as broader connection to non-space industries and a trusted relationship with governments across the nations. And I think most important one is positioning as a startup shareholder, which has direct access to mid-deck broker for our customer. So bringing those together, we are committed to, make that happen, make this, reality. And we're committed to, deliver this value proposition to our customers and for startup. So, these two engagement with Japanese stakeholders and creating commercial new demand is the, role and value proposition that we are bringing into startup.
That's great. Hey, John, the Ohio State University, and I did say the Ohio State University,
Yeah, okay.
has long been a leader in research, and now it's safe to say, under your new title, is it official?
Tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Well, tomorrow John's going to get a big promotion that you'll see. So it has to do with the research the great research that's going on at Ohio State. You guys were an early entrant, in the research park mentality that we have for ISS. And you've spent your career at the intersection of research and spaceflight. What unique R&D capabilities do you see from the ground up that Starlab Starlab can provide that the ISS maybe couldn't provide in the configuration?
Yeah, so it was a joy to be a part of writing the proposal for Starlab. I have to tell you, when Jeffrey Manber and others and I were, typing into the word processor, you hope, but to see what this is now is amazing. And it was always decided that research would be a core value that Starlab delivers. The ISS is an amazing accomplishment. It took 42 flights to assemble it, give or take. Anthony, you can tell me whether it was 41 or 43 or how am I counting. The point being, it was hard to build, and then we figured out how to use it for research. I believe that research is the very first link in the value chain of prosperity. So, the fibers in the carpet, the striped toothpaste that you use, the polymer that's in your badge, all of that at one point was research. And it moves its way through. And so we always wanted research to be a part of this, and that's why it's so important that, today, well, let's say 120 years ago, there was a funny-looking guy in a patent office with a wild haircut and a bushy mustache, and he wrote a paper on general relativity, which was research for sure. But today, every single one of you is a commercial consumer of general relativity through the fact that you use GPS. And that general relativity correction is essential to make sure you find your way to the pizza store, you don't land your airplane 20 yards to the right side of the runway. So universities are the research engine, especially in the United States, research universities, large research universities, public research universities, land grant universities. I can talk about what that is, but basically their mission is to drive new knowledge into the economy for social, economic, educational, and quality of life outcomes. And that doesn't actually happen on the station, okay? The station is where we do the work. It's where we learn. It might be where, as Marshall said, we produce a new product. But until you get that back down to the ground where we are, it's very hard to figure out how does that get driven into the economy. I mentioned earlier, some of my students are amazed that when we had early satellite reconnaissance, we would have film. I have to explain what film is, but we would snap a picture with over a satellite, and then you have exposed film on orbit. And until you had this ecosystem of being able to take the film, kick it out of the spacecraft, re-enter, catch it with an airplane, sequester it, take it to a place, deliver the film, print out and then hand it to an analyst, and she said, oh yeah, that's what, people are fishing in your waters, or, we're seeing some bleaching of the coral reef. All of that infrastructure, which we're going to instantiate through the Vista Science Park and other places, is designed to extract all that value. And so a university's role here is not to be Captain Kirk on the bridge, not to scratch our beards and think about what you should be doing or to advise you on this or that. It's to get our hands dirty and to be Mr. Scott in the engine room, trying to generate new knowledge and new outcomes that fortify the business cases and help those research-oriented companies whose new products and value delivery to their stakeholders has to come from research, and in this case, from a laboratory that they can't build on the ground at any price.
That's great. There's been a great transition with NASA on depending more and more on the commercial partners. And we saw this, in NASA's leadership on commercial cargo and commercial crew. Marshall, question for you. What gives you the confidence that the commercial industry is ready to support and it can support the commercial space stations? And I said plural, space stations.
Yeah. So that's right. So, a lot of people go, oh, CLD, commercial space stations, we've never done this before. That's not true. This ISS was built by commercial companies. Those products have been up there and flying and in use for 2 decades. And those things that we're talking about a change in ownership. We're talking about a change in funding and how that's actually monetized. We're talking about a change in how we take the products up, use them, do the research, or do the manufacturing, and how we get that back down to market so that people like us can use it every day. So, when I look at, what's new in my mind and what I think I see is, we have a very, very robust, capable space industry that's able to go build these things. As a matter of fact, has built these things. When I was at NASA, I was, responsible for things beyond low Earth orbit, like the moon, Mars, those types of things. And one of the things that we were walking around saying is that we're at NASA. NASA is turning over low Earth orbit to commercial industry. Why? Because they've got it. They know how to do it. They can handle it. They've developed these systems. They know how to build thermal systems and power systems and launch and take crew up and down and those types of things. So absolutely, I believe that commercial industry is not only ready for it, it has already demonstrated that. We're talking about a change in how we finance it, how we manage it and operate it day to day.
That's great. And as you pointed out, Marshall, the financing part is a huge element of this. The idea is that NASA is not going to just stroke out a big check to do this. We have to go out and prove ourselves. Companies have to go out and prove themselves and raise this money to build these stations. And I think that leads me into the next question for Issei on the international partnerships. From your vantage point on international partnerships, why are they so essential? I mean, it's a no-brainer, especially as we're here in Sydney talking to so many different countries and everything. And again, you guys were at the forefront for us in being one of the first international partners that we had. But why do you see the advantage, and how does that help grow the credibility and capability for Starlab?
Yeah, couple of thoughts. First of all, I think international partnership concept is a very core concept of Starlab, and one of the greatest strengths that a startup has. Because operating CRD will require lots of coordination and cooperation with space agencies and the space industries across nations. And having leading the companies from each regions like US and Europe and Canada and Japan is the most efficient way to build that bridge. So in that aspect, I think international partnerships really important. And in addition to that, I think as ISS has shown, space station program is multi-decade long program that no single company, no single country can sustain alone. So I think the long-term relationship, cooperation, collaboration across nations, across the companies is really key for the success of the program. And in that sense, I think Starlab's model, international partnership, is already make it possible for having longer term relationship among stakeholders rather than the structure that are having kind of transactional relationship with each stakeholders, which tends to be a short-sighted relationship. So given those, thought, I think international partnership is quite important and essential for not only for startup but a CRD program. That's my view.
John, that's great. John, being such an advocate for research, and as one of the things you kind of directed our group here was to go out and read the papers, read the technical papers, especially by the students out here that are presenting at the IAC. How do you see the value of the university research and what's the spin-offs from these startups that come out and the global researchers alike? I know you've been really spearheading getting more and more research partners around the world. Can you talk about that and how you're going out and getting these, expanding the research network that you've been doing?
Yeah, so we have to be global because good ideas come from everywhere. no one has a monopoly on great ideas. No one has a monopoly on an idea how to address a challenge that goes beyond a border or an opportunity that goes beyond a border. And so we have to be global in terms of how we attract, explore, extract the best ideas from whatever brain happens to originate the idea, wherever she lives or he lives. We have to find a way to bring that to fruition. Research is somewhere between a river and a garden, in the sense that rivers are very hard to turn on and very hard to turn off. They are just a constant flow. Research is like this in the sense that, it's just ongoing. You don't start it and stop it. Maybe the water goes up, the water goes down, but it's always ongoing. And so what we want to do is take the research momentum, the Bewegung, to use a German word, perhaps improperly, but the movement and the energy around research, and use that to fortify the outcomes that will come from Starlab and frankly from anybody else that does research in low Earth orbit. We want to help that, make that go, so we build a market. And secondly, give people the opportunity to contribute to these challenges and opportunities that we have. Universities are really important for a second reason, and that is we build collaborations all the time. We just build the best teams we can to go after opportunities and try to win them. And so, I'm not saying that Ohio State has everything you need. I'll say we don't have everything you need. We have a lot, but we don't have everything. Nobody does. And so where do you go to get an entity that already does this sort of every day, puts these teams together to address certain problems, and then when the problem is either solved or moved forward, we dissolve the team and move forward. So the corporations and the companies haven't taken on a long-term liability in terms of hiring a team of 20 PhDs that have some expectation of working there for 40 years, right? That's not what we're about. So we have to be global because the best minds are everywhere. We have to be global because the opportunities and the challenges that we face aren't local, they are global. And then I think that the third reason that we have to be global and we have to be steeped in the universities is, we kind of all share the same planet. We all need to drink the same clean water and breathe the same clean air. I think we all love our children deeply, and we all share the night sky. And so space is a really interesting and useful place to do these kinds of things and demonstrate the art of the possible, things like Apollo-Soyuz in my own childhood, and things that happen must be possible. And Apollo-Soyuz happened. The ISS happened. It's not an accident. Purposefully moving that forward is how we set the future for the world that we want, as opposed to the one that we'll settle for.
Great. Marshall, coming back to you, we often talk about, the future space stations as a replacement to the ISS. How do you see the Starlab scaling beyond just a replacement of the ISS? Like, what new opportunities do you think it'll unlock? And how does the business plan that you have, how does that support these new opportunities?
Yeah, great question. When I look at Starlab and I look at ISS, they're going to be quite a bit different. ISS was designed, actually John kind of alluded to it, it was designed by engineers for engineers, what I like to say. So you look at pictures of it, there's wires everywhere, it's literally like John said, we built it and we go, okay, now what do we do with it? Oh, let's do research. And then we went and put a bunch of research systems on there, which took a long time, by the way, and a lot of effort to do. But over time, when we stop and we say, okay, how do we do this from the beginning? Starlab is going to be designed with research in mind from the beginning. It's laid out with the systems that need to be built. We're talking about AI-enabled systems, edge computing capabilities on board, advanced communication systems, sufficient power, cooling, things like that is necessary to support the research systems. Systems to be able to do the airlocks to take payloads in and out. It's all about what enables, it's not the vehicle, which a lot of times, engineers like to think, oh, I'm building a rocket, or I'm building this, or I'm building that, and they get focused on the vehicle. It's actually not about the vehicle. The vehicle is what you use to get you to the mission. It's about the mission. It's about what are we doing. So when I think about, where we're going with this, that's what I look at. What's the main difference is we're focused on the mission. We're focused on the service. We're focused on how do we elevate research and science opportunities and advancement for humankind. we do that by making sure that we set up the system to be able to do that.
Great. As John and Issei, the ISS has been in orbit now close to 2.5 decades and operating extremely effectively. What are some of the takeaways, maybe the biggest takeaways that you've seen from lessons learned from the ISS on how we improve this on commercial space stations? ISS, magnificent feat of engineering prowess, but what are those lessons that NASA has been helpful on in teaching us, and NASA, JAXA, all the different space agencies, and how do you take those lessons learned moving forward on international or on commercial space stations?
You want to go first? You guys have better baseball players than we do.
Yeah, I think somehow it's overlapping my comments the previous question, but I think lessons learned or I think a good example of ISS which we can run is international partnership. There are tremendous the framework IGA or something like that. So it's each country can work well for ISS for own benefit, and there's a framework that make it possible. I think that's a really good example and the lessons learned in the ISS from the ISS period. But I think a point that needs to be improved is that maybe read time and the customer interface. So those things needs to be improved, and that's what our startup is trying to achieve, so that we can get more commercial demand from non-space customer. So I think key is how we can develop non-space customers demand. So I think for that as I said, real time or customer interface really needs to be improved from ISS.
Yeah, I think the friction is pretty high sometimes on ISS in terms of being able to get an idea built, flown, and then get your data back. So we want to lower the friction of doing business and make it a little more inductive and less resistive. That's the first thing. Second thing is a laboratory on the ground. For example, if it's my lab at Ohio State, I can go in there 3, 4, 5 times a day and change parameters on experiments. And I saw something weird at 10 o'clock. Well, when I came back from lunch, I can change the dial, right? That's really hard to do on ISS. It's going to be hard to do on Starlab, but we need to make the cadence of science and of research and the ability to iterate, we got to make that faster. I think another thing that maybe this is just my own perception, but I think when we put the ISS together, we didn't think enough about the outside. We start putting on payloads on things called external logistics carriers. Well, if it's a logistics carrier, it's not carrying a payload, right? Now, the Japanese got this because the porch on the Kibo module is extremely successful. So I think we want to make sure that we're paying attention to things that you can put on the outside as well as the inside, because both of them are unique laboratories and create the facility to leverage all of the assets of the space station, of Starlab, in ways that maybe we didn't think about right away on the ISS. You mentioned when you were talking about built by engineers. I mean, we used to talk about how many tons we had in orbit and how much percentage of tonnage was complete as far as the station, right? And that's all great, but when I build a house, it's really about the family and the memories that we make and the relationships of the people inside and the holiday dinners that we have. And so it's about what's going to go on inside as much as how many square feet do I have, and do I have 2.5 bathrooms or 3.5 bathrooms? So that was a good point, Marshall.
Marshall, back to you. Will the government be an anchor tenant on CLDs? And how do you view the role as our government, other governments, and what roles they play, on the performance of on the CLDs?
Yeah, so obviously initially, I believe that governments, not only NASA, but also JAXA, CSA, and other governments, ESA as well, will all be the primary tenants and users of this. But I believe over time you'll see that change. The cost of going up to do this kind of work is going to drop dramatically from what it costs to go to the ISS. As we move forward, and that will enable other tenants, commercial tenants, industry, other folks, those even individuals that may want to go do that. That will happen over time. I think that I have a vision for as price comes down that you'll see more space stations go up, not even more Starlabs, but also other stations. I see that is a future that's not in the not too distant future as we move forward. So again, I think the primary tenants initially, maybe for the first few years, are mostly government kind of sponsored approaches, but I believe that will change rapidly as costs come down.
So in our waning minute, I've got a crystal ball question, looking out in the future. 10 years, and I address this to Issa and John, 10 years from now, where do you see, Starlab? What gets you excited about Starlab, the science that's going on, and where we'll be in 10 years?
This is easy. The young men and women today that are undergraduates or in graduate school or maybe even in high school, they will be performing cutting edge research. They'll be flying to Starlab and back, and they'll be creating untold social, economic, educational, and quality of life outcomes for people everywhere. That's what I see.
That's great. Issa?
Well, I think we strongly believe that so many new cutting edge technology will be developed, using our station. I think that's the future that we are really looking at.
I think, when I think about Starlab, I think about its capability. I take this phone and, nobody would have imagined that this device would enable so much that we can't live without these now, right? And I think that's what you're going to see out of Starlab and space stations in general is that right now people go, oh, okay, that's cool. What do I do with that? And then, when you open it up and make it capable for researchers and entities to go be innovative and not be restricted by, government restrictions that say you can't do this, you can't do that, or I have to share my IP with you and those types of things. That opens up an entirely new world that will enable, puppy weather, things like that, that you just have no idea what's going to do and change the world. And that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited about the future that commercial space stations, research in microgravity activities, manufacture microgravity, the change that will have on the surface. Because, I like to say, not a dollar is actually spent in space. Nobody's changing money in space. Nobody's leaving their money in space. It's being spent here on the ground to make life better on the ground.
Well, I think you guys paint a pretty bright picture. From my perspective on a policy side, we have our challenges and opportunities ahead of us in the near term, but I think we're very well positioned, not just for Starlab, but for other stations, for people living and working in space and doing the critical research that just can't be done here on Earth. And that'll just grow this LEO economy. So I really want to thank you guys for sharing your insight and knowledge on this, and thank everyone for being here. And I think you guys stick around a little bit if there's any questions, afterwards, please come up. But I've run out of time. So thank you so much. Thank you, Constance.
Thank you.